morning and welcome to a brand new week. This Economy and Politics show. Today, December 28, 2020. We bring you conversations on the political, economic and socio-political space as it affects the populace. Today, we're looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, which has become a menace again, the concerns concerning the global economy and how it will impact nations like Nigeria. But let's give you an outline of what we'll be looking today at. First, the analysis of the top 5 nations with rising COVID-19 cases. Look at COVID-19 and second wave of lockdowns. Look at global economic adjustments to COVID-19. And of course, Africa and the second wave. And Nigeria's economic capital, Lagos, is going tough on the impact of COVID with new restrictions. We begin by informing our viewers that the current number of COVID-19 cases globally is currently 80.5 million plus. This is also showing that 45.5 million plus people have recovered, while the number of deaths recorded are 1.76 million plus. The top 5 nations with the highest cases include the United States of America, which has 19 million plus cases. America is the largest economy in the world, followed by India, which has 10.2 million plus cases, one of the top 3 most populated nations in the world, a member of the G20 group of nations. Brazil is number 3 with 7.47 million plus cases, with South America's economic giant and member of G20. Russia has 2.99 million plus cases, a global oil and gas powerhouse and G20 member. France makes it number 5 with 2.55 million plus cases. France is a G7 and G20 member and leading European economic force. Just giving you an insight into how the COVID-19 spread is impacting the globe and nations. With this wave and concerns of how it will affect the globe, some nations are taking precautionary measures, and this is leading to another wave of lockdowns. Israel in the Middle East has announced the 3rd national lockdown following the COVID-19 second wave. The lockdown kicked off since yesterday. Italy, a member of the G7 group of industrialized nations, is on another lockdown, and this is to combat the second wave of the coronavirus that is seemingly deadlier than the first one. For those who follow, remember that Italy was among the worst hit nations in the first wave of the COVID-19. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte had to take strong steps in restrictions, ensuring that people's gatherings and various activities were suspended to address the tide. Northern Italy was amongst the regions that followed the restrictions very, very robustly, and this time again, Italy's activities will be restricted, social and economic. The United Kingdom, fresh from its Brexit deal with the European Union, is on a new tiered lockdown. It will be recalled that since December 2nd, 2020, the UK government had seemingly committed to ensuring the right levels of intervention in the right places to manage another outbreak of COVID-19. This is part of the efforts to suppress the virus and mitigate the risk attached to it. In the UK, there are 4 tiers to the local restrictions being carried out at the moment. Tier 1 is the medium alert, which ensures that it takes into cognizance all the initial risk and spread points of COVID. Tier 2 is the high alert, where it focuses on areas that could show a huge potential of spread and take those very precautionary steps. Tier 3 is the very high alert, where it continues to monitor the trends and situations and, of course, puts those areas under check. And the Tier 4 are areas that are required for a stay-at-home experience, which is not really an interesting experience, but it's part of the measures designed to ensure that people follow those guidelines and mitigate the impact of COVID. In the United States of America, the COVID-19 restrictions have been either reimposed or sustained in some of the key states. States like Massachusetts, Idaho, Maine, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Delaware, Kansas, Louisiana, Georgia, Hawaii, Alaska, California, Arizona, and Arkansas, Washington, and New York are all the major key states that have either seen reimposing of the restrictions or strengthening of the already laid down restrictions. Don't note that for those who follow the United States of America, the world's largest economy, these states are part of the key states that drive socio-economic activities in the country. All the measures taken by their various governors are to ensure that America mitigates the impact of COVID. Don't forget, America is number one with the highest cases of COVID-19 in the global level. And in addition to what is happening in the US, President Donald Trump signed the $900 billion stimulus plan. This is part of measures to help provide succor to Americans who are feeling the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really, really hitting businesses and households. So President Donald Trump has signed that stimulus plan. This is one of the nations that is signing a robust economic intervention plan for its citizens to weather the challenge of the COVID pandemic. President-elect Senator Joe Biden has said that America should prepare for a very tough phase, considering the impact of COVID-19. The director of the National Institute of Allergy and Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, also re-echoed that. So all the restrictions we're seeing in America is designed to ensure that they can mitigate this impact. And so for those who have been talking about COVID, it's not really a joke. It's a very serious thing, and global efforts are very important to mitigate this impact. And one area that will feel the impact, as we know, is economy. Beginning of this year, the economic prospects were bright. People were expecting bold double-digit growth, but when COVID kicked off as a pandemic in March, a lot of economies have been feeling the impact, including Nigeria. Now, if you look at the global economic impact in terms of COVID-19, there are sectors that really felt the heat. Oil and gas is one. I mean, if you look at the whole analysis for the whole year, oil and gas has been badly hit by the impact of COVID. The aviation sector has also been hit, with the International Air Travel Association saying that over $400 billion will be lost in revenue. Sports, yes, you follow sports, but sports has also felt the impact in terms of the revenue that comes from fans and stands, people watching the matches at stadiums and events. There have been huge restrictions in terms of having fans participate. For those that follow football, you see that a lot of football matches the fan base is just like 1% of the entire capacity, not enough to boost revenue. Entertainment has also been affected because outdoor events have been restricted. Take example for December, where you have a beehive of events. A lot of artists have had to restrict themselves to virtual. That's a face for all of those players. And then tourism also has been affected. Countries have had to readjust that make their revenue from tourism, like Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Like in Nigeria, where you have Cross River States, you have the annual Calabar Carnival. All this has been impacted by COVID. So it's really, really a huge impact on sectors and something to really learn from. One other important metric that shapes the global economy, the international crude oil price for countries that depend on the commodities. We've seen the oil price hover now between $48 to $50 per barrel. Prior to now, it went to its lowest ebb of almost $25 per barrel earlier this year because of the COVID impact. So will the second wave adversely impact the crude oil price direction? Because Nigeria is one nation, one of the oil-producing countries that also has over 85% of its revenue from crude oil. We'll be monitoring those developments as they come. Speaking about government interventions, I earlier told you about the US government that has signed a $900 billion stimulus plan just to help support businesses and households in this period. Other countries have been marshalling out measures like the United Kingdom, the European Union, Asian countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and even Nigeria has its own economic sustainability plan where the central bank and the Ministry of Finance have worked out various measures for interventions in the country. This is something that governments must take seriously. And like the World Bank and International Monetary Fund have said, these measures must be transparent, robust, and inclusive, because especially weak and low-income nations will feel the impact of this. So it behoves on their governments to be accountable and, of course, to show transparency in their activities. Now, looking at Africa, Africa has felt the impact of COVID, and the cases are rising. So the big question is Africa about to face the second wave of the COVID pandemic? South Africa is experiencing surges. I mean, thousands of people dying, and there are concerns about how it's being managed. Nigeria is beginning to see 1,000 cases. In the last 5 days, it's been rising to that level. And Kenya and Egypt also are part of the countries reporting rising cases. So are we going to see new rounds of lockdowns in Africa? Are we going to see, because South Africa now has become the first country in the continent to cross that 1 million cases mark, and that shows how intense it is. So the efforts of the African governments brings to the fore the need to strengthen their health infrastructure and also improve the response mechanism to issues like the outbreak of diseases like this. But most importantly, like we stated earlier, the economic measures to help stabilize the economies. Nigeria is in a recession. South Africa's economic growth is weak. And that shows you again how fragile economies can be when they face this impact of COVID. Some sectors have shown prospects, but again, the big question is how Africa will navigate this phase. It calls again to the structure of the economies in the continent. We've talked about Africa, but what about Nigeria? Nigeria faces an imminent second level lockdown. This is not a story a lot of people would like to hear, but except citizens follow the guidelines set by the federal government and even state governments, there is a big risk of a total lockdown again. For those of us that followed, we saw the impact of the first level lockdown. It affected economic activities, and here we are. We're grappling with a recession. Hopefully by the time we get the fourth quarter economic report, we'll know where Nigeria is. The federal government had issued a directive that all workers from grade level 12 down are to stay at home for the next 5 weeks. So almost the first part of the first quarter of the year, almost the first 5 to 6 weeks, federal government workers below grade level 12 would be at home just to monitor the developments and see how this new strain can be mitigated, reduced. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, chaired by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, already had his mandate extended till March 2021. This is the body language of the presidency showing that they really want to continue to coordinate the activities of tackling the COVID-19 spike in the country. The PTF expects states to be tough on mitigating the risk of the virus. As the Nigeria Center for Disease and Control has been reporting, like I said earlier, over 1,000 cases daily in the last 5 days. There are fears of a possible second level national lockdown. And citizens don't like to hear that, like I said. It will be very hard to bear considering the challenging socioeconomic indicators in the country, the recession, challenge of employment, and even some companies are struggling to even pay salaries. But states are not taking anything for granted. I mean, states like Lagos, Ogun State, even Rivers are now beginning to take strong measures. But let's take on Lagos. Lagos is Nigeria's economic capital, and Lagos is taking very tough measures now. Lagos State government has sealed over 12 facilities for breaching COVID-19 safety protocols. You know, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to really show how serious you are in the actions. Think about it, some major event facilities, some of them which WebTV has been to cover some major economic and social events, like the Landmark Event Center, DNA Nightclub, the Boss Bar, Queen's Event Center. Some of these facilities known for hosting events, weddings, social gatherings, have now been sealed by the state government because they have pinpointed them as violators of the protocols. The Lagos State government is not taking things lightly. And don't forget that the executive governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, recently recovered from the COVID impact. And you can imagine how tough he will be because it's always easy to show action, particularly when you've experienced it. So Sanwo-Olu is among the governors this year that contracted COVID-19. The governor had ordered closure of all these centers and nightclubs because they violated the procedures. Don't forget that prior to the Christmas and festive season, the governor had directed that event centers should operate 50% as part of measures to curtail the spread of COVID-19 following a spike of the cases in the state. But these event centers and clubs did not follow those guidelines, and that's why they were sealed. The operations was led by the Director General of the Lagos State Safety Commission, Mr. Lanre Mojola, and his team, who were involved in sealing these facilities during the enforcement and monitoring exercise in the state. Mr. Mojola added that those establishments who broke the government's guidelines will be charged to court once documentation has been properly processed. He reiterated that the state government is committed to curbing the spread of COVID-19 and will leave no stone unturned to achieve this mandate. This takes us to a very, very important issue. Of course, it's been debated and discussed, not just in Lagos, but across the country. And that's religious gatherings. You know that this period is those periods that the churches, the mosque, various other faiths gather, prepare into a new year. One tradition, of course, I mean, for me, attending my own church and denomination, is that 31st night. I mean, you go to church, pray from 10 into the new year, thanking God for a brand new year. But as the build-up to the end of 2020 begins, the federal government and states like Lagos have been very emphatic on religious organizations, church and mosque. They want them to suspend the crossover services this year as a way of curbing the spread of the virus. Now, the Christian Association of Nigeria called for caution on those steps. A lot of people are giving suggestions, and it all boils down to how we can manage this whole process. A lot of people say, I mean, you could have a virtual crossover service, or for churches that have huge followership and have a general overseer, maybe he could minister from the headquarters and people could hook up. But this is going to be one big test for the nation. Will churches, will other religious organizations follow through with these guidelines of not holding big, crowded crossover service, or will it be flouted? Don't forget that there's a 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. curfew. Particularly Lagos has enforced that. So that is why they're particular about this, because if you have a crossover service, definitely you're going to have activities dovetailing to 12 to 4 a.m. How this is managed could be critical, because if it's flouted across board, it could reinforce the government's resolve to take Nigeria to another level of a total lockdown. So it's very important. In the last few days, we've seen several prominent personalities and even a cabinet member either pass on because of COVID or contract COVID. So it shows that it's something that everybody must take responsibility for. Masking up, keeping those necessary social distances, washing our hands regularly, and ensuring that we keep a safe and clean environment because of this. And don't forget that vaccines have already been rolled out. The US, Pfizer and BioNTech have started rolling out vaccines, and some people have already started taking the vaccines. Europe is already now in that vaccine moment. Africa is expecting to get them in January, from January 2021, hopefully. But of course, as the vaccines are going out, the most important thing is that people are being advised to take those precautionary measures. Hopefully, as we adhere to the protocols and guidelines, and as the vaccines are being rolled out and taken, people can get back to life as normal, because like was said in the church service, this new normal of being maxed up or social distancing affects our initial understanding of sociology and social relations. We want to go back to the normal of interaction, being free to express yourself. Nobody likes that kind of masked up life. I mean, you want to talk and express yourself. But for us to get to that level, there must be cooperation. Citizens on their parts, government on their parts, ensuring that we keep safe and follow the protocols. And hopefully we expect Nigeria to take strong actions, particularly in the aviation space, flights from countries that are prone with this strand of COVID, we should take strong measures to regulate and curtail. And hopefully, we would be able to avoid that looming second national lockdown. That will be all for today's edition of the Economy and Politics Show. You can join our website, www.prochange.com, to watch latest developments in the economy and the policy space, and also updates on what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. We give you updates around that in our watch. Also, you can also send your views and comments on what you think about COVID-19 and the adjustment that it will have on the economies, and of course, how we can avoid this national lockdown, or if it happens, the implications for the socio-economic space. Send your views and comments to news@prochange.com or tag us at WebTV. To come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.